an eerie sound in the depth of night. These are the sounds of one of the UK's most secretive nocturnal birds. The Tawny Owl. This is normally a solitary bird and exceptionally difficult to find, even in daylight hours. Sometimes, though, their location can be given away by the alarm calls of other birds. The habitat of the Tawny Owl is normally restricted to woodlands and some suburban areas where there may be some isolated stands of trees. They're very active during February and March as the breeding season commences. Nest sites are normally holes in trees, sometimes nest boxes, and occasionally the old nests of other birds. The story of my local owls started in early May. As I walked along the winding track of our local wood, I noticed a large nest at the top of a fir tree at the side of the track. I saw the outline of a large bird sat on the nest, and I was overjoyed when I realised it was a tawny owl. I kept a close eye on the nest, and then on the 16th of May, I was faced with a wonderful sight. Two beautiful downy chicks. They looked at least a week old, which meant the female must have laid her eggs in mid or late March. It was a dangerous moment when the owlets met a squirrel for the first time. Grey squirrels can predate small birds. Thankfully, they both survived. I'm amazed that in just a few days the young have developed so well. You can see juvenile barring on the owlet's chest. They're also stretching their wings, and you can see the flight feathers starting to appear. I revisited after 6 days, The owlets are still doing well. They're gaining a good amount of weight, which means that the adults must have a good supply of food. You can hear the adult female calling nearby. She was nearly always within sight of the young. Tawny owls have a reputation for being aggressive, and I was surprised that the adult owls allowed grey squirrels to get so close to the nest. On this occasion, the squirrel leaves a scent mark within its urine on the side of the tree. Although the adults tolerated the squirrels, the young owlets were at a very vulnerable age, and I wasn't surprised to hear that 2 local cats had been attacked. Let's just say the cats came off worse and learnt a very valuable lesson. As the days went by, the owls were getting more active and doing much more preening. It was fairly obvious that within a few days they'd be out of the nest. Tawny owls normally have 2 or 3 young. As with other birds of prey, the first chick to hatch will be the most dominant. The uppermost owlet here appears darker, is slightly larger and has less down. This is definitely the dominant bird. The smaller bird can be heard begging for food. It's a busy time for the adults. Daylight hours are long during this time of the year. Therefore, the owls have to hunt during the early mornings and as the light fades at dusk. The owlets were now out of the nest. They have long, well-developed legs and very strong, sharp talons. Before they can fly, they spend a lot of time exploring the nearby trees. They climb along branches and up and down tree trunks. Developing wings provide balance as they flutter from one branch to another. The adult in a nearby tree, still maintaining that vigil and keeping an eye out for predators. This was the last occasion that the owlets revisited the nest. It was now time for them to start to investigate the rest of the woodland. A lovely sunny morning at the end of May. Both young owlets were calling for food at the edge of the woodland. Here's the larger dominant bird, stretching those growing wing feathers. And the smaller sibling perched nearby. It's great news when I can see that both owlets are really healthy, and the juvenile plumage is clearly showing through now. Less than 50% of young Tawny Owls survive their first year. So it's looking really promising when I see both owls putting on weight and taking short flights. It's still a testing time for the young owlets, as they're learning to climb up the trees and flapping their wings for extra lift and balance. It's also a tiring time for the adults, hunting for many hours in order to feed the growing owlets, keeping a watchful eye during the day and then roosting whenever they get the chance. The fine weather in May of this year provided ideal hunting conditions for the adults. A good food supply meant that the owlets stood a better chance of survival. The young were getting more adventurous and climbing higher into the canopy. Whilst at least one adult continued to watch their every move. The calm weather had been ideal for the young owls to practice their tree climbing skills. that within a few days things would change dramatically. Strong northwesterly winds were on the way, and these were ahead of thunderstorms. This was a new experience for the youngsters, often clinging on precariously. They disappeared for a number of days, and I feared the worst. It was such a relief that following a heavy rainstorm, they appeared again. They were deeper into the woodland, and no doubt had been sheltering from the very bad storms. They were hungry and constantly begging for food. It was obvious that one of the adults was close by. And there she was. She was soaked and must have been hunting during the heavy rain. It had now been 2 weeks since the owlets had left the nest. They were now more mobile and making short flights throughout the woodland. It was almost the end of June, and the owls had survived another 2 weeks of very mixed weather, with heavy rain and thunderstorms. They continued to mature and were now flying longer distances, but they were still heavily dependent on the adults. The morning of the 7th of July was to prove to be very eventful. Both young owls were frantically begging for food. I'd seen the adults feed the young during the day, but I'd never managed to record it. I relocated to take some images of the other young owl. And then within seconds, the adult flew in with a small rodent. Both young owls quickly joined the adult and tried to grasp the prey in a melee of fluttering wings. This time it was the youngest sibling that took the prey and flew to the ground. What looks like a wood mouse is a decent meal for the youngster. There were heavy rains on the evening of the 9th of July. On the following morning, I located both of the young owls. They were sheltering on the side of a large conifer tree and had obviously suffered during the night. They were totally soaked. Thankfully, it's a sunny morning and the breeze should help dry their feathers out. It's not long before an adult arrives and they both start begging for food. Typically the smaller owlet was slower to respond. It was certainly in need of a good preen. Here's the older sibling. There's a nice warm breeze drying his feathers. There's nothing worse than wet feathers to give you an itch. And here's the little one, drying out in a nice sunny spot. Definitely a lot of work required. It was almost 3 weeks before I found the owls again. There'd been a significant change in their appearance. The oldest sibling now had a rich red-brown back and wings, and adult chevrons coming through on its chest. The younger bird was less well developed. Its head and chest were still quite downy. They settled down to roost together in the deep woodland. This was the first time that I'd seen them showing affection through preening. It was now 9 weeks since the young left the nest. Normally, the adults will continue to feed the young for around 13 to 15 weeks. Hopefully by that time, this young owl will be mature enough to fend for itself. It's a pleasure to watch these birds. They're absolutely stunning. Those incredible eyes, designed for hunting at night. That razor-sharp bill, perfect for tearing prey. The youngest owl watches its sibling as it flies by. It joins the young bird on the same perch. That sibling bond seems to be getting stronger as the birds get older. They seem to find some comfort by being sat together, and mutual preening also strengthens that bond. These birds are now inseparable. They're always in the same area and will always settle down to roost together. A beautiful sight this morning, with both young owls roosting together. They're now 12 weeks old, and we can still see there's a big difference in maturity. The older bird has now got a very prominent adult plumage, with a well-formed facial disc and prominent chevrons on its chest. The very sleepy younger bird on the right looks much paler and still has many juvenile feathers. It's a little worrying that the youngster is still quite a long way behind. This day was to be an important milestone for the young owls. It was a relief to see one of the birds hunting for the first time. This bird had just flown to the ground and was eating prey before it returned to the perch. This was a good sign that they were on the journey to becoming self-sufficient. It's a wonderful feeling to witness the mutual preening between them. It's a good example of how incredible wildlife can be. It's food for the soul. This was to be my final day filming these beautiful birds. They were both in the same area of woodland, and the older bird had been hunting again. Almost 11 weeks had passed since the owls had fledged, and they will soon have to survive on their own. As they settle down together, you can see that the closer bird, the younger owlet, now has adult feathers appearing on its chest. It's a surprising change in just a few days. It's a moving moment to witness this affectionate preening again. Look at the head holding here. I have seen other species do this, but never Tawny Owls. This will be one of my fondest memories of my time with this family. Another week or two, perhaps, before their own parents will drive them away from this territory. So these young owls will have to find new territories in nearby woodland. I can only hope that next year they will have a family of their own. And so the cycle begins again.